This altarpiece is by Raphael. It's called The Marriage of the Virgin. And we can still see it in its original framework here. So that shape is the frame, and then the painting is sitting within that framework. Now, what's being depicted here is a story that is written in the Golden Legend. The Golden Legend is a collection of stories about various holy figures and saints that was written in the 13th century. So the 1200s, the middle of the Gothic period in the Middle Ages. Now, in the Golden Legend, there is a lot of information about the Virgin Mary and her life before she gave birth to Jesus. This here is one of those stories. More specifically, it's when she was married to Joseph. Now, first remember that Mary and Joseph are Jewish, and here we see the rabbi of the temple, decided there should be a miracle sign given to who was worthy to be her husband. And each man was to present a wooden staff or rod in front of Mary and the rabbi, and whomever's staff miraculously blossomed, like sprouted flowers, was worthy to marry her. And so we see Mary and her entourage of young women and the rabbi, and then this is the group of young men who have brought their wooden staffs. You can see them all hanging or holding onto them, right? And none of their staffs have blossomed except for Joseph. You can see it. Let me zoom in. See it there? A little sprout of flowers. And so then in that moment, the miracle has happened, and we see then the marriage of Joseph and Mary. Now, this altarpiece has all the characteristics that we are already very familiar with, doesn't it? We have figures in the foreground, we have a very clear middle ground, and then we have a very distant background. We also have the characteristic of important fancy architecture for important fancy people. This artwork is really establishing or illustrating the rules of the Renaissance that we've already established in this class. Balance, logic, harmony, and gesture. So the balance coming in, the balance of that composition. Do you see the linear perspective? Yeah. You see that there? Atmospheric perspective? Yeah. Then gesture, well, we have the marriage, his putting the ring on Mary's finger. We also have other elements of the story told through gesture. What's going on over here? What's this guy doing? He's breaking his rod because it didn't blossom. So he's upset that he's not worthy to marry her, and so he's breaking that rod over his knee. So we have these other kind of anecdotal elements of the story told through gesture. Surprise, surprise, Mr. Perfect does it so well. But honestly, that's one of Raphael's best skills. He sees what others do really well, and then he will try to do just as good as they did. Oh, he's really good at linear perspective. Oh, he's really good at architecture. Oh, he's really good at faces. Oh, he's really good at bodies. And then he'll try to take in from these masters of those elements to make his own ideal or perfect work. When we look at the marriage of the Virgin, we are supposed to be appreciating all of these, not as copying from others, but learning from others, bettering from others. And he is very directly looking and learning from his master, Perugino. So, as I said, Raphael, he moved to Florence and was an apprentice to Perugino. And this work by Perugino, Christ delivering the keys of the kingdom to St. Peter, is a panel in the Sistine Chapel. it is a panel in the Sistine Chapel, a chapel used by the Pope in the Vatican City in Rome. It is a big deal. It's a major painting done by a major artist. And it looks remarkably similar to Raphael's. Raphael is a student of Perugino. He understands what Perugino did right, and he's going to duplicate that in his own work. It's not plagiarism, it's not cheating, it's taking from the best and making it your own to be just as good. See that linear perspective going on there, right? And then what about this? Did you recognize the pyramidal composition? So the apex, the focus at the top was the rabbi's head, and then he looks down with gesture to the rings being exchanged. The three main figures create three corners of the pyramidal composition, and then a fourth, which is you. It's open, and you can see how Joseph's toes even point towards that fourth missing corner. It's open, and it's allowing for you to stand and be present, be a witness to this marriage in this altarpiece. And then think about that connection of the linear perspective, which goes back and out, and then here coming in towards you. It's almost as if it's pulling you in and then seamlessly integrating you all the way through the back. And not just through the back, but through the beautiful open door into that far off distance. So much space, so much balance and stability, balance of figures on either side, and then that pyramidal composition. And then, like I said, this gesture. I love this figure because not only is he doing a great example of gesture and telling story, but the complicated posture that this man is standing in is a way for Raphael to show off. Because yes, he's Mr. Perfect, but he knows it. And that's why I tease him. Because he knows he's Mr. Perfect. And so Mr. Perfect is like, I want to do a really complicated posture. And so he puts the figure into this bent forward, coming towards us with that knee coming at us, while the figure's trying to balance. This extreme perspective we could consider foreshortening. Foreshortening, the use of perspective to represent in art the apparent visual contraction of an object that extends back in space at an angle to the perpendicular plane of sight. And I have here two examples to help understand foreshortening. So it's not just linear perspective, it's not just showing depth, but this extreme viewpoint, like having a hand and then my fingers, did they disappear? No, you're just seeing them at this more extreme perspective. Okay. Cool. So anytime you see a complicated posture like this, like you see in Raphael's, you know the artist is showing off. And of course, Raphael's a big show off. What about this temple behind him? Now, as the Golden Legend states, Mary's rabbi in the temple is the one who performs the marriage after seeing the miracle. So we have the rabbi and we have the Jewish temple behind them. It's a really beautiful, stunning piece of artwork, an architecture, right? It's a building. And Raphael, I told you, Mr. Perfect, he's going to be like, who does architecture really well? Okay, Perugino did it. Sorry for the scrolling, but let's go back up to Perugino. Perugino, his master, did it, and it looked great. It has that dome. It has this drum with these angles so that you get this beautiful modeling of highlights, midtones, and shadows. Highlights, midtones, and shadows. So Raphael's like, yeah, okay. My master, Perugino, did it. I want to do that too. His dome or his structure is slightly different though. You know why? It's because there was another architect around that heavily influenced Raphael. And he's working at the same time. Raphael is painting the Marriage of the Virgin. His name is Bramante. Now, Bramante, who is also from Umbria. So Raphael's from Umbria, Bramante's from Umbria. Bramante was older and very well established. At this time, he was the official architect to the Pope. Bramante was working on this small structure called the Tempietto. Tempietto is simply Italian for small temple. He's working on this in Rome. Raphael, he knows Bramante, and he knows Bramante is the best of the best. I mean, why else would he be the Pope's premier architect? So Raphael's structure is remarkably similar to Bramante's Tempietto, and that is not an accident. This row of columns that rings the outside is echoing that of Bramante's. This balustrade across the top, and then the faceted dome drum. It's very similar to Bramante. So now we're going to take a short tangent to look at Bramante's Tempietto. Here, look at that's nice and up close. Here we go. So here we are looking at Bramante's Tempietto. This is your next artwork. So I'm combining the two into one video, Bramante and Raphael. Bramante's Tempietto. Now, as I said, Bramante was born in Umbria. He was a more well-established artist. By the time that Raphael is working on the altarpiece, Bramante, has been hired by the King and Queen of Spain to make this structure. The structure, the Tempietto, is built on the believed site of where Saint Peter was martyred, where his crucifixion took place. Now, the structure is still in its original location in Rome. It's open to the public, but you have to go through the Spanish Royal Academy. Here, this is the Spanish Royal Academy in Rome, and you need to walk through and under this row of arches, and so that's what you see here. The reason I tell you where it is and its placement is because I want you to understand it's a small space in a small courtyard that the temple rests on. Now this temple, we call it the Tempietto, not because it was actually serving as a temple to gods or goddesses, but because it served as a marker or a shrine, a sacred space marking where St. Peter is believed to have been martyred in the city of Rome. It's similar to a classic Greek or Roman temple because, well, this is the Renaissance after all. Duh. And then let's look at the architectural elements here. Let's break it down and give it some terms. So there's the dome on top. The dome rests on a drum. Drum is the solid base in which the dome rests, and all the gravitational force rests on that dome. Then there is this line of short, stubby columns that's called a balustrade. It's kind of like a railing. It's a low wall, the balustrade. And then the row of columns around the outside is a colonnade. Columns, colonnade. Now, I highlight these three things. One more thing, because I want you to see the scale. I made my best friend, Sarah, stand in front of it. It's not big, right? All right, so now let's look at this in terms of proportion, because we know in the Renaissance, it's all about balance of proportions. Well, what do we see here? We see a small balustrade, a slightly taller drum, and a taller colonnade. So we see a balance of small, medium, large. Renaissance. crazy. Let's see also, look at the up close here. So here we are looking at the drum, and you can see that there are these insets or niches that are rounded and square, rounded and square, rounded and square. There's a balance of opposites, round, square, and they go all the way around the drum. That's the crest of the Spanish royal family there, because they pay for it. And then if we look down here at these columns, what we see is this beautiful repetition around, but we also see how the light hits and creates these shadows. What we're looking at is the architectural version of chiaroscuro, that there's not too much that hits the light and there's not too much that's hidden in shadow. Instead, what Bramante has done is given us a balanced structure in which there are elements that are in highlight and midtone and shadow. Highlights, midtones, deeper shadows. So let's pull out again and not only see the balance of small, medium, and large, but also square, round, highlights, midtones, deeper shadows. Okay. So it seems to be carrying a lot of the characteristics of what the Renaissance believed to be good art. Well, then no wonder Raphael is going to put it in his painting. Raphael is, okay, I'm going to give you this. Raphael is extremely observant. He's brilliant. He's good at everything he sets his mind to. But he also sees the brilliance in others. He recognizes their talent. And when he uses similar elements in his own work, it's not to imitate, it's not to plagiarize, it's to celebrate everyone's talent. But he's also super perfect, and I get so annoyed by everybody just saying how great he is.